Good morning. So welcome. I think we have a couple more people coming from the parking lot, but I think we should get started. We're already a couple of minutes behind. So I want to welcome you to the annual meeting of the Chesapeake Watershed CESU. That's the Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit. My name is Eric Davidson. I'm the director of the Appalachian Laboratory, which is part of the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. UMCES is the host of the Chesapeake Watershed CESU, the host institution. And so it is located, our center is located at the Appalachian Laboratory in Frostburg, Maryland. So by virtue of being the director there, I'm also the director of the Chesapeake Watershed CESU. So it's my pleasure to be able to chair this meeting. And the first thing I want to do is thank our hosts, who, as you'll find out in just a few moments, are also our newest partners in the CESU. And we're delighted to welcome them to our partnership, and very appreciative of the fact that they made available this wonderful facility so that we can have this meeting. We are being joined by a number of participants either by telephone or by live YouTube television. And so that's a first for us. And the consequences of that, I'm told, is that there is a 20-second lag period or something. I don't think that's to edit out our profanities. I hope not. But that may have some effect when we do Q&A, and so we should just be aware of that and deal with it. But I think it's great that this is a new opportunity for us to have the meeting in this kind of way, and so that people who can't come here for whatever reason can participate as well as possible virtually. I know I've been frustrated numerous times on the telephone, but they should be able to see our presentations and hear us and see us, albeit with a 20-second lag. I would first like to introduce Pat Campbell, who is the Chief of Natural Resources for the National Capital Region of the National Park Service. He also leads the Center for Urban Ecology.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is pretty exciting for us, and you know, at the National Park Service, we really value the CESU. My boss, who's Perry Wheelock, the Associate Regional Director for Resource Stewardship and Science, was unable to be here today, but she wanted me to thank all of you for coming and to let you know that, you know, our parks and our region, we're constantly using the CESU and the partners. In fiscal year 17 alone, we had 49 projects worth over $4 million and about 24 partners. So we're looking to build upon those relationships and continue to expand the CESU as we work on a lot of natural resource projects. And my partner here, Sam Tamboro, is the Chief of Cultural Resources, a lot of cultural resource projects. And now we're starting to integrate natural and cultural resource projects into even bigger activities. So we're really excited to meet some new people and to learn about some new activities and to see how we can continue to grow. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. And now I'd like to introduce our host institution, and Dr. Bob Warburton is the CESU, the new CESU contact for our newest partner here at Shepherd University. He's the Assistant Dean of Teaching and Learning and the Acting Dean of the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics.
Good morning and welcome to Shepherd. Later on, we'll do a little slideshow and introduce you to some of the demographics and the pieces to go with that process. It's exciting to be part of the CESU and Chesapeake Watershed. We've already had some work and projects with members of the agreement group, and we would like to expand upon those, obviously. The sort of main part from the beginning that I want to do is we have in the room the president of Shepherd University, and I'd like to introduce Mary J.C. Hendricks to you, and she and Danny are then going to be doing sort of the formal signing of the cooperative agreement associated with it. So that allows us to talk to you and for you to come and talk to us, which is going to be kind of exciting. Dr. Hendricks is Shepherd's 16th president, and she's also an alumna. She is the first graduate of the institution to lead the university in its history. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree from Shepherd in pre-med biology and her PhD from George Washington University in anatomy and cell biology. Subsequently, she was a National Institutes of Health postdoctoral research fellow at the Harvard Medical School in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology. Before coming to Shepherd, she was President and Chief Scientific Officer of the Stanley Mann Children's Research Institute and the Anne and Robert M. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago and Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. Prior to that, she held various leadership positions at the University of Iowa and the University of Arizona. Dr. Hendricks has been a member of the National Institutes of Health Council of Councils, the National Human Genome Research Institute Council, and the National Cancer Institute Board of Scientific Advisors. She's past president of the Federation of American Societies of Experimental Biology, which consists of more than 100,000 members, the largest coalition of biomedical research societies in the United States. And as a member of one of those societies, she's been my president before, so it's kind of novel to have her back as a different kind of president. She has testified before Congress on numerous times in hearings regarding budgets for the National Institutes of Health, the Department of Defense, the National Science Foundation, and about the human embryonic stem cell research. She served as a co-founder and co-director of the Virtual Naval Hospital, a digital medical library that's created to provide critical information to service personnel deployed in remote sites. And that has now been adopted by navies of 4 different countries. Dr. Hendricks became a leading scientist in cancer research with a focus on identifying genes that contribute to cancer metastasis with the goal of discovering new therapeutic strategies. She has also authored more than 270 publications on biomedical research and is a recipient of numerous awards. She has 7 patents related to the treatment of cancer, and these patents were recently licensed to a pharmaceutical company. She continues active research with her partnership with her lab members who are housed at the West Virginia University Cancer Center. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mary Hendricks.
Appreciate it. Generous. Well, it is such a pleasure for me to welcome all of you to Shepherd University. I'm so proud of this campus. It's one of the reasons I came back. And I just want to say that here at Shepherd, our mission, which we take very, very seriously, is to train the next generation of leaders, innovators, and model citizens. That's very important for us. And so we really are such a proud member of the Chesapeake Watershed, CESU. This will give our faculty, our staff, our students great opportunities to be able to interact and partner with so many different federal agencies, other universities, and colleges, really focused on the common good. And so we're very excited about this partnership and about the many possibilities that you will allow us to engage in. So thank you so much. Welcome. I hope you have a great day. It's not going to snow, although it feels like it, but it's going to be a fun time in Shepherdstown and on campus. Thank you.
It even has your school on it.
It does. Okay, so I should do first?
Yep.
Okay. Cecilia, would you like us looking at you or looking down? Okay. Okay. This is great. Thank you. So
Thanks for joining.
It would be November 1st, right?
Mm-hmm. November 1st.
Okay. Sign that date. This is perfect. And then you have one too. Okay. Oh, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you for
very, very
joining.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. So Danny, is this where the stage crew is supposed to do their thing? The stage crew is doing a little something. That's us.
Some are dreamers, some are doers, and just a few are both. That's the heartbeat of Shepherd University, a quality education that's within reach. In fact, we're one of the most affordable schools in the nation. Whether you're just starting off or you're ready for a new start, Shepherd University. Don't just dream, do.
How many PhDs does it take to move the furniture? So I'm going to hand the next phase of the meeting over to Danny Filer, who I guess has already taken the stage, even though he wasn't introduced. Danny is the research coordinator for the Chesapeake Watershed CESU. He's been on the job for exactly 1 year and 1 day. It's very memorable that he started on Halloween of last year. And he is largely responsible for many of the new activities and energy and vigor that's been brought to the Chesapeake Watershed CESU. And so he has a number of things to do, a report and other business of the CESU. So I'm going to hand it over to Danny right now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's great to have you all here. So before I jump into my business, we're going to showcase Shepherd, the reason that we're here today, right? One of our newest partners. I will also be recognizing Virginia Tech, who also joined this year. Joel is in the room. Joel, where are you? Joel. So we'll be talking to Joel here later on. But for starters, let's talk about Shepherd. And this is who they are and what they do.
So hopefully you're not getting tired of seeing me. And I thought, since we were sort of the newest partner in the house, that we would just show you a little bit about us and how we do our job. So I stole the logos from various pieces and stuck them on the slides because I thought those would be kind of interesting to have in this part. So we are in the town, which is the oldest town in West Virginia, in Shepherdstown, and it has great history, which you'll be introduced to in a moment by some of my colleagues. But this is basically the rule that created Shepherd College at that time in February 27th of 1872 in the county of Jefferson, where we are right now. And so this is McMurran Hall. It's named after the first president of Shepherd University, and it was originally the county seat for Jefferson County before it moved to Charlestown. And we took it over, and it now houses our foundation and our alumni offices, and there's actually a large theater behind it, which we use for presentations and other pieces. And so this is taken from 1904. This piece right here is taken looking north towards Maryland and the Potomac. We're as close to Maryland as you can get. Once you hit the bridge, you are actually in Maryland. The Potomac and that bridge belong to Maryland, not West Virginia. So that has some implications in terms of Department of Natural Resources, DNR, and various other pieces. Just to put you where you are, you're right there. You're in a field. This was taken at the front end of the 1900s. And so to give you a newer version, this is taken with drone technology, which is brand new. I think the last one was taken with somebody leaning out of an airplane taking the picture. So here we have this. And this is now looking towards the south east. And just there you are, you're here. That's where you are in this particular process. And so some demographics and pieces to go with this process. We have over 100 different undergraduate majors and concentrations across 22 different departments. And hopefully all of them at some point will have some resources and students and others that you will be able to take advantage of in the CESU. We have a number of different accreditations. We're part of a liberal arts college group called COPLAC. We're the only one in West Virginia, and there's a total, I think, of now 27 institutions that are part of this group. We also have now some accreditation pieces that I thought, of the ones that were there, I thought I'd bring them out. In terms of the arts and various other pieces, and also within hypers and the tourism, which is associated with marketing and other pieces. And Dr. Stacy Kendig, who's the chair of that department, is sitting in the back of the room. We also are part of the School of Arts and Design. And we've had arts folks from our departments working with Harpers Ferry Center, developing some of the signage, maps, and brochures associated with the National Park Service. So we've always had somewhat of an interaction with the folks. I did a sabbatical with Harpers Ferry Center in 2001, working in their labs, and I was lucky to go up to Gettysburg and down up over to Antietam and work on their monuments as part of their analysis piece. And from my perspective, we're newly accredited by the ASBMB, which is a member of FASEB, which President Hendricks used to be the president of. And just for the heck of it, we're also nationally ranked #2 in Division 2. Go Rams. To give you an idea of our size, about 3,800 students total. These are degree-seeking students, undergraduate. So we are predominantly an undergraduate institution. And by the Carnegie listing, we're a limited master's and doctoral program. So we have 157 master's students and 25 in our doctoral program, which is part of a nursing program. And we will be graduating our first our DPNs this May coming up. So the very first mob will be walking across the stage, getting hooded, and we'll be screaming a lot and yelling and jumping up and down. And in terms of just our GPAs, this is sort of the pieces. We have a fairly strong group of students coming in, and every single student who graduates from Shepherd must complete a capstone internship project, every single one of them. Apply what you've learned in the classroom to a project. And so this is where the CESU becomes absolutely brilliant from our perspective. They can work in your facilities, they can generate the kind of work that they need, that they can then generate to build portfolio and presentation, and that may actually be the thing in their portfolio that gets them the interview for their graduate position or their job. So I'm looking at the CSU as helping my graduates move forwards, not only in the sciences, but across all 5 colleges in the institution. So the first person to sort of talk about who we are and what we do is going to be my colleague, Dr. Peter Vila from the Institute of Environmental and Physical Sciences. And he'll then be passing off to 2 other of my colleagues. This is Shepherd. This is who we are. Welcome to Shepherd University.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank you for allowing me to present what we at the Institute of Environmental and Physical Sciences do. We have basically 4 now majors and areas of study. We have comprehensive aquatic sustainable resource management, environmental geomatics, which is our new one, which does GIS and geographical information systems work. Our newest one in process is sustainable food production. We work with a lot of institutions already that the CSU is in. Federal, we work, for example, with the USGS, USDA, NPS, and we have a variety of state and county places that we put internships in and do research with. What I want to talk about now is emphasize a couple of the projects that we've done with research, and then talk about a couple of the internships that we've done and show how we can do some very strong collaboration with many of the CSU partners. First one, for example, is deer movement between unhunted and adjacent private properties. This is work that was done at oh, geez, man, this is Monocacy, I think. Yeah, Monocacy, Smithsonian Institute, and Antietam. We did other work in Monocacy, and Antietam National Battlefield. And then we also have done some work in the bacterial work, nutrient work, and streams, so a lot of aquatic work in Jefferson County. Another aspect done by Dr. Groff is looking at the data analysis of mountaintop removal, looking at the extent and looking at how to extract data from aerial photography, as well as looking at the correlations with mining activity and other impacts such as public health or other ecological impacts. Another member of our department, Dr. Clarissa Matthews, is looking at, along with the USDA and Rutgers, with management of different proposals to look at invasive stink bugs and how you can deal with them. You need integrated pest management and those sorts of things using non-chemical management techniques. Going on to the student internships, have a couple of these. One is collaboration with federal, state, and local agencies, any NGOs and industry partners. And these are internships that are mentored by Shepherd faculty, and they design and they conduct original research. They look at issues and problems that are of importance to any of the partnership institutions. And here are a couple, Julia and Shannon led other aspects. The Monocacy work, and at Harper's Ferry, we've looked at ash tree health survey, and here's a shot of Harper's Ferry up in here, and another shot down here of Antietam. And they looked at a variety of GIS work, looking at proximity to where the infestations of these trees are and other aspects. And you can see here the emerald ash borer and then the problems they cause. And here we're doing GPS work with locating where the trees are, the state and the health of all those trees. Another aspect, worked with another student, Austin, for example, looked at the accuracy of GPS and getting information versus GPS work versus aerial imagery, which can be important in terms of how you locate invasive species and that sort of thing. GIS work, as you can see illustrated here, is pretty important, and we can look at a variety of things ranging from historic structures, 3D visualization of aspects, any drone flying, GPS of components. This shot of this student here is actually not one of ours, but actually with the National Park Service, who's taken some training on GPS work. So it's used a lot in resource management, but has a lot of implications for many of the aspects that our partners would deal with. My last slide is an example, again, of how we can monitor resource use. This is Tabor Farm, which is part of the property at Shepherd University. And you can use drones to take aerial imagery. And from that aerial imagery, here's another picture of the drone, you can then extract where are the invasive species, where are the historic structures in relation to what. And so you can utilize these for a variety of research purposes and informational purposes. Vital, I think, for resource management as well as any other management that you want to do. This is something that we here at Shepherd have the ability to, and students to do. That's all I have. And the next slide, I think you guys are up.
Hi, good morning. Is it loud? Is it okay? Okay. Jim Brumal, an assistant professor of history here at Shepherd, as well as the director of the George Heather Moore Center for the Study of the Civil War. Welcome you all. And special thanks to Danny. Where'd you go? Oh, very nimble. And Bob. So like many of you here today, you know, I've used my personal passion to shape very much my professional pursuits. And my particular passion is centered in the realm of history. And I've sought to make history accessible to diverse audiences because I firmly believe in the power of the past. And that particular word is of paramount significance. Not history, but the past. Americans are, in fact, great students of history, though perhaps not in the way that we'd immediately think. A clever bit of research by David Thalen and Roy Rosenweg focused not on what Americans did not know, but instead on what Americans did know and how they thought. Incredibly, most people had done research on what people didn't know, but never really wanted to know what they did know about history. And what Thalen and Rosenweg find is that the past was pervasive. It was a natural part of individuals' everyday lives. It was central, really, to how they lived. They took photographs to preserve memories. They watched historical films and television programs. They took part in activities. They were history-centric. And most importantly, and most relevant to our audience here today, is that they sought the past or history out in specific settings. Museums, cultural resources, historical sites, areas that many of you work in, you preserve, you protect, and you interpret. And so for me then, Americans' connectivity to the past demonstrates the importance and impact of applied history. The past is clearly relevant to Americans, and many consume it at sites that the National Park Service, for instance, oversees and is responsible for. And it's to the National Park that I'm going to speak in particular because that's the organization with which I've had the most experience. And the National Park Service, as many of you here know today, are currently embracing a Find Your Park campaign, which I think is a clever way to conceptualize these institutions. And if I may quote from the website, it says, quote, "Every park is different to every person. They offer moments when you learn something about yourself in the most unexpected places. These stories from park lovers like you are as diverse as the parks they visited." In other words, this campaign is seeking to bring new audiences, to bring new perspectives, to engage in familiar places in new and innovative ways. And I think that dovetails extremely well with what we do here at Shepherd, and in particular with what we do in the history department. And so if I may draw upon two specific personal examples of projects that I've done, I think it'll put a finer point on kind of the abstractions to which I just spoke. So I have conducted, and one of my colleagues, Dean Herron, is down there who helped with this project. I had conducted a historical resource study for the Chesapeake and Ohio National Historical Park that was focused primarily on the experiences of civilians, slaves, and soldiers during the American Civil War. And I have just started a research project for the Cedar Creek and Belle Grove National Historical Park on the African American experience across time, really a study from the 18th to the early 20th century. In both of these instances, the partnerships were facilitated through the Organization of American Historians. I'm happy now that Shepherd is an organization that can partner directly with these entities. And so let me get to the crux of the matter here. In the case of the CNO, the park had known a great deal about the engineering of the canal, the physical construction of the canal's economic history. But what they sought to understand was how the Civil War impacted the region, how civilian and slave populations interacted with soldiers, and how ultimately the Potomac Valley's natural history shaped the war in this area. And so what I found is a very vibrant history of Union soldiers who employed contrabands, as they referred to them as laborers, pre-war abolitionists who, once they became Civil War soldiers, actually elevated the cause of Union to that of emancipation, slave populations who used the chaos of Civil War to ultimately set themselves free, and a deeply contested region that, unlike large portions of the Eastern theater during the American Civil War, saw continual and protracted combat through guerrilla operations. In other words, what I learned through this project is an entirely different narrative of the American Civil War that has in turn, I think or hope, informed how this particular park is interpreting their past. And so I guess to kind of wrap this up, since the CNO project is done and the Cedar Creek one's still kind of on the horizon, I only have 5 minutes, I just want to conclude by kind of bringing this back to where I started. I primarily conduct research for academic publications that have an extremely finite audience. Partnerships with organizations such as the National Park Service allow me to use my passions for a higher purpose and hopefully will benefit the resources that I've utilized really throughout the course of my lifetime. I sincerely hope that today's meeting will spark future conversations about potential partnerships and allow more people to ultimately find their parks. And at this point, I will turn over the podium to my colleague, Dr. Keith Alexander. He's a specialist in many fields, but he specializes in particular in historic preservation and German history. Is that fair? Okay. He wears many hats.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Welcome to Shepherd, and I really look forward to what I hope will be a long collaboration with this new endeavor. So my name is Keith Alexander, and I am sort of the co-coordinator of one of the concentrations within the history major here at Shepherd University, and that is the Historic Preservation Public History concentration. We have 3 separate concentrations, and my colleague, Dr. Brumal, is the director of the Civil War Center and oversees the Civil War side of things. My colleague, Julia Sandy, and I work on historic preservation, public history, and then there is a more general concentration. Let me talk primarily about what the students at Shepherd University, specifically within the Historic Preservation Public History program, do as part of their education at Shepherd, preparing them either to go on to graduate school. A number of our students have gone on to be very successful graduate school candidates, as well as finding immediate employment in the Park Service or elsewhere. All of my students take a variety of classes where they get hands-on experience doing the things that we talk about sort of in the abstract in the classroom, but never necessarily get a chance to actually perform hands-on until they're out in the field. With Shepherd's undergraduate approach, these students participate in service learning projects in which they will partner with local organizations such as the Shepherdstown Historic Landmarks Commission, the Shepherdstown Historical Society, or other local groups. And some of the partnerships and projects that we have done include producing oral histories, really all dimensions of the oral history process. So going out, doing the interviews, going out finding oral histories that have been recorded but not transcribed, so they've had access to those and have had experience actually doing the transcriptions, and then doing the transcriptions of their own interviews, editing them, in some cases putting together indices of those presentations, of those oral histories, and then going on to participate in public presentations of those findings. Another aspect, another project that they've gotten involved in doing has been participating in putting together National Register nominations or of inventories of historic structures in Shepherdstown, for example. We've partnered with the Historic Landmarks Commission, and we've worked for 3 or 4 years running now, putting together surveys and helping update the inventories of existing historic structures in the town. My own sort of personal passion, maybe a little bit of a strange one, is actually for old cemeteries. And so we have done hands-on service learning projects with the local cemetery resources here, including gravestone cleaning, limited gravestone restoration projects, gravestone documentation, and public participation and presentations of some of the findings and the importance of preserving these cemeteries as records of our past. And so those are just a few examples of some of the projects where Shepherd students, through service learning, really get their hands dirty, literally, in gaining these experiences that they can go out and do great things later on. The other really key takeaway for this morning is keeping in mind the rather substantial internship requirement that our historic preservation and public history students have. All historic preservation public history students have a 400-hour required internship. And ideally, that is located in the field where they would like to be working. We have a number of interns who have gone off and done programs with the national parks. In fact, I see Sam Tamboro out here. Good morning, Sam. How are you? We've had the pleasure to place our interns with Sam in the past, as well as a number of other groups. So we've done providers such as C&O Canal. We've had them located at Harper's Ferry. We've had them work in the Antietam National Historical Park. And we've had them located as far afield as the Vieux Carré Commission in New Orleans. So these students, through these internships, get absolutely essential hands-on experience learning about the workplace, learning about the kinds of hands-on skills that they would need also in graduate school, so they are well prepared when they go on to graduate school, and they come back revivified. It is remarkable the transformation that these internships instill in our students. And so I'm very excited at the prospect of perhaps broadening the opportunities for our students. And the wonderful thing about both the internships and the service learning projects is that both parties benefit. That is to say, that the students certainly learn a lot and benefit tremendously, but also our partners benefit, whether they are our service learning partners locally or whether they are our internship providers. So I really hope that this gives you a little bit of an overview of what our students have done, what we at Shepherd have to offer, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn things back over to Bob Warburton.
Shepherd. This is who we are, this is what we are, and hopefully I'm looking at an audience that has brand new partners that we can work with and old partners that we can now renew those partnerships with. So thank you very much. Welcome once again to Shepherd University, and I'll hand it back over to Dan, and we'll move on with the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions for Bob or anyone from Shepherd before we move on? That was a pretty interesting presentation. Are there any questions, either in the room? Okay. Okay, that's good. You answered all their questions. That's great. Okay, good. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Many of you, you're familiar faces. Some of you, it's a very familiar name, and I just put a face with a name today. So that was very nice. We've talked a lot over the phone and over email. So thanks again for making the trek. If you have someone here as far away as Christopher Newport University. Yes, representing. So that's great. So thanks for coming out. So I just have a quick kind of update, the whole business of this meeting. So I just want to run over a couple things. As Eric mentioned, I've been in the job for 1 year and 1 day. So it's been a fun year so far. One of the primary goals that Eric and Perry and I and others in the leadership of the CESU, we're committed to kind of making the CESU a smaller place. I wasn't, again, in this job for a year, but we really want to understand more what's happening across this network, not just within agencies. And then celebrate those stories and share them among the network. So you're going to be hearing a lot from me as I continue to do this job, trying to understand what you're doing so that we can gather that information, we can share it, we can celebrate it, we can collaborate. That's the whole reason the CESU was created. So I look forward to continuing to work with all of you and do those types of things. It should be pretty exciting. As Pat indicated, we had a great year this year within the Park Service. I'll speak to the Park Service. That's the one that I work with the most. We did 49 new projects this year. That's more than we did in the last 2 years. And we were able to obligate and do projects in value more than we did the last 2 years. And that's a credit, I think, to the universities that we have in the CESU. 30% of those projects were other regions of the Park Service coming to us because of the universities that we have. So we should give ourselves a pat on the back for that. We expect that type of work to continue. We will always need education, research, and technical assistance in a lot of these agencies. So that will continue, and we're excited about that type of relationship. For some of you in the room, the Park Service went through a process change this year. Tom Fish, our national CES. Tom, you want to raise your hand and wave? He's our national CESU rep. From the national office. The Park Service had to go through a rather somewhat painstaking process change this year. Tom helped us through a lot of that, but we had to put master cooperative agreements in place that allowed us to then obligate money. You other federal partners are like, what does any of this mean? If you work in a university, you know what I'm talking about if I've reached out to you in the last year. But we've been able to clear that hurdle, and it's been good. So thank you for all of you who cooperated with that and didn't not return my calls or not take my emails. But it ended up being a relatively painless process, mainly because of the help we received from the national office. So, Tom, thank you. The other person I'd like to recognize also is, so Shepherd joined this year. The other group that joined was Virginia Tech. Joel is here representing Virginia Tech. It was great to have them in this year. In the Park Service alone, we used Virginia Tech very heavily this year, mainly because of their cultural landscape program, but we'd like to expand that. So, Joel, thank you for making the trip. It's good to have you. In the coming year, we have 8 universities who have expressed interest in joining this CESU. So we're hopeful we can get those 8 in over the winter. Tom's nodding his head. That's going to be a lot of work, but we'll do it, right, Tom? So that's exciting, right? We have more universities that are joining, so you'll be hearing about those once we get the applications. Trying to increase the depth and breadth of what we offer the federal partners. We certainly offer a lot now, but we want to try to keep that expanding. I also want to continue visiting. I was out a lot this year visiting a lot of national parks. I went to some federal agency offices, USGS, U.S. Forest Service, NOAA, Department of Defense. It was a whirlwind tour, lots of driving. It's great. And I also was able to visit lots of universities, and I want to continue that. So for some of you universities, I've scheduled visits. Visits have just recently happened. I have some scheduled over the winter. But don't wait to hear from me. If you want me to come, shoot me an email. I would be happy to come out. I will try to coordinate, like for example, Christopher Newport University, our Department of Defense rep is right next to CNU. So we'll bring some others. We'll make it a party. It'll be great. And that's kind of, what we want to do. A lot of these projects, a lot of what ultimately happens in the CESU sometimes happens from a conversation. That is the benefit of the network, right? So it doesn't hurt for us to have those conversations with as many people as possible. So please don't wait to hear from me. send me an email, call me. I love getting calls. Okay, all of you picked up out on the table out there a copy of our fresh off the presses Volume 1, Issue 1 of the Chesapeake Watershed CESU newsletter. It's in very high demand. So if you have a copy, please take it back and share it with your colleagues. So we're going to do this biannually for starters. It's a way for us to kind of get the word out about what we have to offer, what's happening in the network. We want to share, you'll notice on the front page, we want to share some success stories. This is Joy Beasley, who was a product of the CESU network, who now is in a very key leadership position in the National Park Service. It's a way not just to get the research done, but it is reaching that next generation, the next employees in these federal agencies. This is a way to do that. So we want to celebrate those stories. We'll talk about some research on the back. You'll see the team of those folks who helped me up in Eric's lab. I'm very appreciative that Eric allows them to help me and leaves my stuff in my office and doesn't put it on the curb. So thank you, Eric. But we have a great team up there that helps with a lot of this stuff. Doing this newsletter, maintaining the database, setting up meetings like this, it's hard to do with one person when you're trying to coordinate all this different stuff that's happening. So I appreciate that. So do take this with you, read it, share it. Going forward, I'll distribute these electronically. Via email. We'll post them on our website. So they'll go to the CESU rep at the respective schools. Then you can share them amongst your departments and your other connections. They can go outside the network. We're also interested in stories. So you'll be hearing from me. As I make visits, I have conversations, I learn different folks' connections to the CESU, and we'll try to tell those stories. So if you have an idea for the newsletter, contact me, okay? Don't wait for me to call you. But please do take one if you didn't grab one on the way in. The other thing I'd like to point out was this. On the table out here, there was a massive packet of paper that looked like this. It's just 31 pages. So if you grab one, thank you for taking one. I'm sorry I killed so many trees, but it was just for this one time. We'll be doing this electronically going forward. And for those of you who are on the phone, I'll be sharing the newsletter and this electronically after the meeting. But what this represents, this is a list of all the active CESU projects that I know about in our network. This is all the federal partners, okay? So this isn't just Park Service, it's all the partners. So if you have an active project and it's not on this list, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a project not on here because it was updated after I printed it, so don't worry, it's in there. I'll be sharing this list, though, quarterly going forward with all of my contacts within the universities and the federal partners. The goal is I want an active, up-to-date list. I know there's projects happening in other federal partners that I don't know about. There may even be a project happening in the Park Service I don't know about. It's hard to believe, but it's possible, okay? We want to capture those projects on here so that everyone in this room will know what's happening across the board. It's a great opportunity for collaboration. If you see a project that's down the alley of what you're working on yourself, I can connect you with that PI. This is how the network is supposed to function. So this actually, since I printed this list has already changed 5 times. So it's going to be a constant change, but I'll be updating it to the website quarterly and emailing it out quarterly going forward. You can always contact me at any time, and with a click of a button, I can run an active sheet. I can also use this database to track by university, by partner, by PI, by fiscal year. Sky's the limit. It's great. Eric's team built it for us. So thanks, Eric. So do take this with you, take it back to your faculty and your staff, and share it and try to encourage your colleagues, especially you federal partners. If you know that there's a project out there that's not on this list, I would really love to know about it so that we can talk about it. And when the project's completed, we can then celebrate the project, okay? We do have a number of federal partners in the room. We have several folks here from the National Park Service. U.S. Forest Service is here today. NOAA is here today. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is here today. So thanks all of you for making the trip and coming out. We appreciate it. Okay. So I'm really curious. I wanted to save a good portion of my time to hear from some of you. Many of you I've talked to in the room, and I've done visits and we've connected. But I just wanted to hear how things are going out there. If there's anything, if there's a vision that you think this network should take that's not happening. Is there anyone who has a burning desire to kind of share an idea or talk about how it's working well for you, it's not working? Any comments? Eric, I think, has the mic. He's our question person. Any success stories you want to share? And I don't know, I was in and out during the Shepherd presentation, but a lot of the work that the Shepherd folks had shared, I know the history projects were done through the Organization of American Historians. It was actually a CESU project, which is a different CESU and a different, when they were not through Shepherd. So anything? Okay. Well, everyone's happy. That's good. No complaints. Good. Okay. I'd like to bring Tim Watkins up to do a presentation on some students. So Tim, if you want to come up and start getting ready, I'll bring up your presentation. Tim's going to talk about some opportunities for students, some paid internship opportunities with the National Park Service. So this is Dr. Tim Watkins, who works at the Washington office at Maine Interior, and he's also our CESU coordinator's rep to the Washington office. So Tim, thanks.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Actually, since you just asked the question, I do have a question for you, Danny. I was sitting there waiting for somebody else to ask a question, but they didn't, so mine. Okay. And I'm speaking with a little bit of ignorance just about where things stand with kind of budgeting processes at the federal level, but my understanding is there's at least a push for EPA to reduce investment in bay cleanup programs. And I'm wondering if there's a vision or an opportunity for the institutions and partners in the Chesapeake Watershed network to respond to that perhaps in a way that might pick up some of the slack.
That's a good question. That's a good question. You guys hear me? Oh, so it's on. Let me pop it. Okay.
I will share my microphone.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And also, Tom, I may actually defer to you. Tom may know more than I. I mean, I know that we, there is the possibility for lots of things to change in December, and I don't think a lot of us know what that looks like. The CESUs stand ready to fill any of those gaps if they can be filled, most certainly. I'm not aware of anything specifically that's coming down the pipe through that potential agency or funding source. Tom, are you aware of anything like that you could speak to?
No, my assumption would be that if EPA's funding is reduced.
Tom, do you want to come up to them because they can hear us on the phone? This is Dr. Tom Fish, who's our national CESU rep. I'm putting Tom on the spot. Sorry, Tom. He's never going to come back to another meeting of mine.
Yeah, that's my last time. So, I'm postulating, so I'm not sure, but so there. Thanks. No, so there can't be an automatic assumption that the slack would be picked up by other feds because likely it's not happening now. It wouldn't happen with the removal of EPA's resources. That said, it's not a bad idea, and I think that the institutions in this particular CESU would probably be well positioned to be responsive to that sort of need. So we are also trying to get EPA as a federal partner in the CESU program. So that, I mean, the fact that they're losing their funding doesn't help that. But other portions of the agency have expressed interest in being within this program nationally, and so there's an opportunity that some of that could be carried forward. I'm not sure. So anyway. For what it's worth, thanks.
Thanks.
And good morning, everybody.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, well, I apologize sort of for that little musical chairs. I think it was 2 months ago, early September maybe, that Dan and Eric and I had a good conversation about this meeting and an opportunity for me to come and talk about internships. So Eric, thank you for suggesting or agreeing to this. And Dan kindly scheduled me for the last few minutes before the bathroom break. And so I was going to put up one slide with a video of a waterfall, but I couldn't make it work. I couldn't make it work within PowerPoint, and PowerPoint is difficult that way. But that's good because I made the tactical error of having a lot of coffee this morning and then rehydrating with some water. And so I'll keep my comments short. I guess I need to use this. Okay. Dan, as Dan mentioned, I'm Tim Watkins. That's my title, Science Access and Engagement Coordinator for the Natural Resource branch or directorate of the National Park Service. And so I work at the national level in NPS headquarters in the Department of Interior building in DC. And my relationship to the CESU network is really behind the scenes. And so those of you who are at universities have never heard of me, and you probably won't see me again. But I kind of keep tabs on folks, not keep tabs on, but I support folks like Danny and our other National Park Service coordinators who sit on university campuses and do the hard work of liaising between federal agencies and other partners. But the conversation that Eric and Danny and I had back in September kind of touched on how a lot of the rhetoric about the CESU network is about opportunities for faculty to collaborate with various partners in order to get research done or technical assistance or education projects done. And that's very important, of course, and productive and beneficial to everybody. But there's an additional aspect of this partnership network, which is that universities provide access to, I don't know, a few 100 million 18 to 25-year-old, 18 to 30-year-old students. And that's a high priority for the Park Service, certainly. And in that spirit, then, I just wanted to highlight a couple of internship programs in the Park Service. And they all are related to natural resources, cultural resources a little bit as well. And they all are available starting in 1 month. Or I should say they're for next summer, but students can start applying. I don't know where, am I? Oh, I see. Left is left, right is right. So there's three that I want to tell you about briefly. One is called the Geoscientists in the Park program. And all of these are, students can apply online. I'm putting URLs up on these slides, and Danny, I think, or Eric, you'll make this presentation available to everybody and to folks on the room as well. So my encouragement to you is to make sure that students and faculty on your campuses hear about these in the next month, because in about 1 month, as I say, students can start applying. Geoscientists in the Park program. Geoscience is defined very broadly. It's not just rocks. Air quality, water quality is included, for example. These are paid summer internship programs, roughly 12 weeks, although there are opportunities during the academic year as well. And they're meant for students, primarily undergraduates, but also recent graduates, age 18 to 35, which is what we consider youth. That number keeps going up every year for some reason. And just some examples from previous years, some hydrological monitoring, stream monitoring, groundwater surface hydrology at Mount Rainier. So these are projects all across the country. So I don't want to imply that we're only talking about opportunities at the C&O Canal or Monocacy or other local parks. Archaeology, paleontology, Grand Canyon. This one on the lower right is an interesting one that's really oriented towards interpretation and education, communication. This is Dinosaur National Monument in Colorado. Behind those students is the excavated quarry filled with cool dinosaur bones. And these students were mapping and digitizing the locations of these bones for a virtual museum so that anybody in the world can then log in and have kind of a, I think, somewhat three-dimensional virtual experience visiting that quarry, which is an interesting use of new technology. Invasive plant monitoring, so on and so forth. So a lot of natural resource monitoring projects in parks, plus communication and education. Another one is called Mosaics in Science. This is just a couple of years old. Again, students and grads, 18 to 35, but it's very, very, very specifically meant for students from underrepresented groups, underrepresented in science, and also underrepresented, frankly, in connections to the national parks. So lots of students of color and women participate in this program. Again, it's a summer project, about 11 weeks. There's a roughly week-long workshop at the end of the summer in DC with a lot of focus on career development. How do you get a job? How do you write a resume? How do you network? How do you make connections with federal agencies and all the rest? And again, students can apply starting in 1 month. Examples from past years, similar sorts of things, right? There's some prairie restoration on San Juan Island in Washington State. Science communication in a digital context at Denali about dinosaurs that used to live in the park. Stream watering, and there's just a shot of the career workshop. It looks like at the White House last year. And then finally, this program, which has kind of a funny, awkward name, Future Park Leaders of Emerging Change. It's what we used to call our climate change program. And the name was changed legitimately, not just for political reasons, but really out of recognition that, yes, climate change is affecting national parks. We need to understand that. We need to understand how to respond. But there are lots of other large-scale changes as well, whether it's land use patterns, whether it's invasive species, or sociological changes, frankly. Urbanization or poor science literacy or disconnect from the natural world, et cetera. Again, 12 weeks, summer workshop at the end. This one operates, and I won't get into the sort of weedy bureaucratic details, but it is authorized under a special hiring authority called the Direct Hire Authority. And the upshot of that is that students who participate in this program, they have to be enrolled as students. And once they complete the program and once they complete their degree program, they can be hired directly into jobs in the Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and 1 or 2 other bureaus within the Department of Interior, without competition. So they don't have to apply for a job. The job doesn't even have to be authorized, or it doesn't have to be advertised. So a natural resource chief for the C&O Canal could call up a student and say, we really need someone who's a GIS expert, and you did this, and you're a GIS expert. Would you like the job? So it's a very, 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 very powerful hiring authority. Examples from previous years, these are all related to climate change. As I say, it used to be specifically a climate change program. Again, examples of science communication related to post-Sandy effects at Fire Island, field research on cold air pools, so where are these pockets of cold air and what is the botanical diversity in them and what's their potential for them to be refugia as climate changes. Some outreach and education efforts with local communities in Santa Monica, and then again, in this case, a group workshop out in a park in Rocky Mountain in Colorado. And I believe that's it. I do just want to skip to my very first title slide there. Oh, I thought I had my email address on there. Work through Danny to reach me if you have questions about these. But again, all of those URLs have the relevant information and opportunities for students to apply. Let them know, encourage them to start looking and applying in about 1 month. So thank you.
Any questions? No, I have 2 announcements. But are there any questions for Tim? Are there any questions for Tim? Oh, we have a question. Eric.
I just wanted to say for some of the programs, you had suggested that they're very much undergraduates. We also hire graduate students too. I just want to make sure people here knew that the opportunities were not limited.
Yep. Undergrads, recent graduates, graduate students, and actually the climate change, whatever it is, future leaders of emerging change. The direct hire authority means that those projects are very sophisticated and involve and require a great deal of autonomy on the part of the students. And because of that, they tend to bring graduate students in. There are some undergrads, advanced undergrads, but for the most part, it tends to be graduate students who participate in that program. So, thank you. Yep.
We finally have a microphone working again, so let's use it.
All right.
Do you have any insight on the availability of Pathways internships, either directly or indirectly under the CESU umbrella?
I do not specifically, because I don't do any hiring through the Pathways program. And Ann or Diane, perhaps you might. And what would be the relationship between Pathways and the CESU? You mean just using the CESU network in order to advertise and recruit students into a Pathways job?
Yes, but also from a graduate student standpoint.
Yeah, I don't know. Dan, do you know?
So the Pathways Authority that's used to, it's typically through the CESU, we're recruiting and hiring students through a cooperative task agreement type relationship, and across the federal government, usually it's through a financial assistance relationship. The Pathways Authority we use to hire through is kind of separate from that. Now, what could happen and what has happened is students we may have made connections with through a CESU relationship may result in a Pathways position, but that would be like kind of outside of the CESU. Does that make sense?
Well, my familiarity has been with the Pathways internships has been through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and there's a connection with the service and a university. The graduate student is hired through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They conduct their research, and then there's guaranteed recruitment into the service. But there is a strong graduate student element prior to the employment.
What government position was the student in Pathways?
Do you also want to introduce yourself?
Hi,
Ann?
I'm Dr. Ann Tim, USDA Forest Service. Massachusetts. So what position was the student, what was advertised through Pathways?
Not advertised. I made the contact with a colleague in service, and then it was organized through that. And I supported the research costs, and the service provided the salary.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Would any of the other federal partners like to say anything about other internship programs?
We have some Fish and Wildlife in the room. Mike, where's Mike at? Or Meredith. This is Meredith.
Hi, Meredith Bartron with the Fish and Wildlife Service. So yeah, the Fish and Wildlife Service has the Pathways program, and it's kind of an evolution from the original SCEP and STEP programs that we used to have. My understanding, though, is there currently is no job guarantee anymore with the program. That might have changed, but at least most recently with our current Pathways, we don't have that obligation currently. But it is a good program to get students into the Fish and Wildlife Service and provide funding. Usually is coming through the regional office to help support their salaries. So,
great. Thanks, Meredith.
Certainly. Even if there's not a mechanism through CESU to facilitate, the transfer of funds, we can certainly use our CESU network to advertise, to get out information, and that's another role that we can play. And so, I'd welcome from any of the federal partners any information they have about internship programs that we could then post on our website, send out email blasts, put in our newsletter, and so forth. So it's a growing, as you can see, it's a growing network, including a lot of undergraduate and institutions and institutions that have master's degrees, and so it's probably a very good network for advertising that information.
And just to elaborate on that point for 1 second from the perspective of the Park Service. So 2016 was the Park Service Centennial. the official goal was to create and connect with the next generation of park visitors, advocates, and supporters. And even though 2016 is now gone, that goal of building more connections and engagement with younger generations is an eternal one, right? That's the evergreen goal, because we have the demographic need in our country to support the next generation of scientists, to support and foster younger generations that are connected with public lands and so on. And so just the mere fact that however many 100 million 18 to 35-year-olds are on campuses around the country is this additional benefit of the network, at least for the Park Service and probably the other federal land management agencies as well. We have people on the phone. Do we have a mechanism for them asking questions, or are you getting any? Okay.
I guess I can announce that over, if they can hear me, that we would be willing to take questions from folks on the phone or watching on YouTube as well.
And just to say something on the cultural resource side, there are also corollary programs for internships for students in cultural resources. And I know in the National Capital Region, the Park Service, we've just had a banner year in hosting students across the region and in our office in Washington. So keep that in mind as well, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
All right.
Tom has a comment.
Oh, Tom has a question for you.
For me?
Yeah.
All right. I don't know the answer.
I was just going to mention two more programs. One is the Intergovernmental Internship Cooperative that's run out of one of the CESUs in the West, but it's the federal agencies providing opportunities for internships, and they're not limited to the students at Southern Utah University, but they can be students from anywhere, and I believe it's mostly undergraduates, but they also have the direct hire authority mechanism with those. I know BLM and NPS and Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife at least are involved in that. And we can include that in the resources. We could give Danny the web link for that. And then the CSU National Office, we have an ongoing project with Howard University, graduate fellowship program for the CSU National Office, and we'll be recruiting 2 new students this year. That's usually advanced PhD students, but it's another opportunity. And then we are hoping to be able to expand some of that to the different CESUs, but that depends on some funding. But that's the hope.
Thanks, Tom.
Excuse me. There are also a lot of informal internship programs that are out there. Just through my program, we have CESU agreements with University of Maryland College Park, with University of Maryland Baltimore County, with the Appalachian Lab, George Mason University, and we bring in interns to work on a lot of different things, from inventory and monitoring to working on Chesapeake Bay studies. And these are just issues where, I have money available to me or to one of the programs that are under me. We reach out to a university, and we start an internship program, and we bring students in. So those aren't formal National Park Service level annual programs, but we get a lot of work done working with these projects. And so, again, if you have ideas, we can start to work together to set up localized internships where we can bring 2 and 3 students in and find the resources to do that with any of the universities or any of the programs in the Park Service.
Right. Okay.
Hi, I'm Bill Dennison from the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, and we have a new curriculum that we've developed for our Marine, Estuarine, and Environmental Sciences graduate program, and it involves blending social and natural sciences, and we call it Environment and Society. And I'm sure the other universities have similar things. It's a trend. It seems like with the federal partners, they go out and they reach out to universities, and they go out in the cultural resources, and they go to the history departments, and they get one of Jim's students or whatever, and then they reach out to the sciences department, and they get environmental science to answer a question, work on a project. So I guess what I'm going to kind of put out as a grand challenge, can we be thinking about creating internships that blend cultural and natural resources? Can we figure out a way to start training this next generation of how to think across those disciplinary boundaries that old folks like me have grown up in? Can we figure out a way to get those brains to rewire and so they can pull it together?
Yes. I mean, I think the siloization of an organization is pretty common, and the bigger the organization, the more siloed it is, and government agencies are no exception to that. But I think one of the great strengths of the CSU network is it is explicitly multidisciplinary, and so the conversations that can happen among university partners and federal agencies can be very multidisciplinary. And the Park Service resource management folks in this room, certainly on a daily, if not weekly basis, are working across those cultural natural resource boundaries. I think that is especially strong in the National Capital Region, where you have parks with very strong historical and cultural value, as well as natural resources and landscapes that are important to that. And then for my part, I sort of overstated that this is the natural resource internship programs, but the emerging change, climate change one, for example, the ones I put up there didn't show this, but there are lots of cross-disciplinary sorts of things. And certainly in the Park Service, you can ask the question, a bison herd, is that a natural resource? Is it a cultural resource? And the answer, of course, is yes, both, and I think we have a good, strong tendency to view it that way, and opportunities for students who want to view things across disciplinary boundaries. Time. Oh, yeah. Oh,
just one more. Go ahead.
So, Ann Gallagher, I'm the National Park Service Regional Science Education Coordinator, and that is the challenge that I have undertaken in my work. And I really love what I get to do because I can attract interns in all sorts of arenas. I can start with the environmental science and the expertise in the sciences, but it isn't of any value if it can't be understood by visitors who have come to a battlefield park, for example. So I have to cross the boundaries. I have to reach agreement between different kinds of interns to spread the message beyond just the sciences, and would welcome ideas from the CESU partners on how better to do that, or where they like what we have done, where we have brought graphic designers in order to translate the science into something readily understood by visiting public. And so let's run with your challenge. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ann. So, Bill, does that answer your question? Right. Okay, so I know there's still some questions. I don't know. We should probably take a break. I think a lot of people. I'm getting people getting a lot of antsy. So, Cameron, we can talk to you maybe offline. Or
Tim's starting to dance up there.
Yeah, and there'll be some time at the end. So let's take a break. We'll come back at 12. That gives you 13 minutes. Aaron can get ready for his presentation. So be back in here at 12 for Aaron's presentation. Okay, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Thank you.
all right.
Okay. Good job.
That went long there, but
That's all right. Everyone was interested. I told you.